Shields died of kidney failure at his home in Maryland. He was 85 years old. Good evening to you. I'm Jessica Dean in Washington. Pamela Brown is back tomorrow. The top stories: summer doesn't start officially until Tuesday, but you wouldn't know it from our weather, with millions of Americans trapped under a huge heat dome. Also ahead, children as young as 6 months old just days away from getting their COVID vaccines. Then the human cost of the crypto crash as the industry slashes jobs. And President Biden takes a tumble on a bike ride in Delaware. You're in the CNN newsroom. And on this Saturday evening, we begin with the real-world impact from the worst drought in the American West in 1,200 years. Much of the country, though, is scorching. More than 240 million people will face 90-degree temperatures or higher for the next week. And they felt those blistering conditions in Atlanta today at this Juneteenth celebration. The thermometers there blasting into triple-digit territory on the Gulf Coast and in the northern and central plains. Meanwhile, severe storms in North Carolina knocking out power for a huge part of the states. Nearly 70,000 customers are still without electricity right now. And that's just one of 7 states dealing with major outages tonight. And nowhere are the signs of the climate crisis more obvious right now than Yellowstone National Park and along the Yellowstone River. Tonight, there is some good news, though, for the first time in days in that part of the country. The south loop of the park will reopen Wednesday on a limited basis. But snowmelt and runoff only added to the historic flooding disaster. The unprecedented rain causing severe damage to roads, water systems, and more. Right now, let's check in with CNN meteorologist Gene Norman. Gene, take us through what so many Americans are dealing with this weekend.
Yeah, Jessica, as you mentioned, we can throw out the calendar in the climate crisis. It doesn't matter what day it is. It's supposed to be summer in a couple of days. Already feels like that in the south and parts of the northern plains. About 30 million people are under some kind of heat alert, whether it's a heat advisory, an orange, or an excessive heat warning. Pretty rare up in the Minneapolis area and sections of Minnesota and North Dakota. Sure, in the south, you say, it's supposed to be hot, right? Well, it feels like it's 109 in Panama City, 108 in Jackson, 108 in Little Rock. In fact, Mobile set a record today of 101. And this heat is going to last for another couple of days, and it's actually going to get worse. Places that don't expect to see these kind of temperatures: Bismarck feels like it's 105 right now. Feels like it's 103 in Omaha and 100 in Wichita. Why is it all happening? It's because of that heat dome parked across the middle of the country due to a rise in the jet stream. There are dips to the east and dips to the west. That's where it's cool. But watch what happens as we move forward in time. The heat dome expands. Forget about the dips. Everyone is going to be sweltering in these kind of temperatures. In fact, there could be over 100 temperature records either tied or set as we work our way through this week. These black dots indicate places that could have that. Could be several days of it. In fact, Chicago, you're up to 100 by Tuesday. Same for St. Louis. Hotlanta living up to its name with triple-digit temperatures, not to mention the heat index, by the time we get to the end of this week. So, Jessica, no relief in sight. And if you're cool now, get ready for that to change as the week moves on.
That's right. We just see that heat dome expanding. Gene Norman, thanks so much for that update. And the climate crisis also means we can expect more devastating wildfires. But the danger from this western drought goes well beyond the mountains and the foothills that grow ever more filled with homes. CNN's Mike Valerio reports from California, home to nearly $50 billion a year agriculture industry.
As scarce water showers shades of gold across browning fields, the predictions are dire.
It's scary to think that we may not be able to do this because we don't have the water to do it.
Richard Bianchi is a fourth-generation farmer here in Hollister, California. His fields, farm, and family are now facing the U.S. megadrought, which scientists say is the worst western dry spell in 1,200 years. More than 90% of the West is in a drought, and Bianchi's most reliable water source is now shut off. So to be clear, Richard, you're getting no water, 0% from your best water source.
Correct.
What are the biggest impacts? How would you explain that to somebody outside of Hollister?
It's limiting the amount of ground that we can farm. It's limiting the amount of the intensity that we can farm.
Bianchi has no choice but to pump lower quality groundwater into his fields, and he's not sure how long that'll last. Less water limits the crops he can grow, and he tells us that reduces our choices at the grocery store. Economists say less supply pushes prices even higher, more pain on top of sky-high inflation. The drought leaves fields fallow, and scientists say fuels historic infernos.
Climate science connects deepening droughts with dried up earth all around us to longer, more severe wildfire seasons. In fact, the fires in New Mexico started much earlier this year than in years past, and right now, it's only spring.
Federal officials tell us the nightmare is already here. Up to 3/4 of Northern California's farming fields could stay fallow, growing nothing this summer. For Bianchi, whether there's a future for a fifth generation of his family's farmers is now in doubt.
Are we going to have water in 2-3 years out of our aquifer? Nobody could say that.
In Hollister, California, I'm Mike Valerio reporting.
And the battle for water is changing ways of life as western states battle for every drop, leading to some painful choices. In Utah, our chief climate correspondent Bill Weir went to see the very unnatural impact on nature.
For those who love to chase trout, this stretch of the Green River provides some of the best fly fishing on the planet.
It's phenomenal. I mean, you get people from all over the world coming to fish this. There's guides from New Zealand, people come from South America. Eric Clapton's been up here.
Is that right?
Tiger Woods. I mean, if you're a fly fisherman, this is one of the places to hit.
Come here, buddy.
Oh, it's a rainbow. Here we go. Chunker.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty. A big reason why is Utah's Flaming Gorge Dam, because it's one of the few dams able to control the temperature of the gin clear water flowing downstream. Wow, these guys are lunkers. Not too hot, not too cold, creating a Goldilocks zone for bugs, trout, and people who also flock to the reservoir behind the dam and keep the economy alive. So you'd understand if locals get upset at the sight of this. The Federal Bureau of Reclamation released enough raging water this spring to drop Flaming Gorge Reservoir by up to 12 feet. A desperate move to help things downstream on the Colorado, where Lake Powell is down 170 feet and could evaporate into a dead pool with not enough water for hydropower or the 40 million people who drink, farm, and ranch this system from Denver to LA.
There's a lot of people who just get angry, and it's their water, it's their kind of geographic possession, and so they don't like it going down to desert cities that also need it.
Because the lower Flaming Gorge gets, the warmer it gets, and no more Goldilocks trout.
And then any effect on the fishery, especially up here, I mean, that's people's livelihoods.
Yeah.
And so people get pretty upset.
I can
Or at
imagine.
least heated.
Whiskey's for drinking, water's for fighting, right? Isn't that the,
Yeah, that's the phrase.
the phrase? Long considered rivals of the fishing guides are the rafting guides, who love high flow for more exciting rides and more customers.
Sometimes we're on the sides of the fishermen, and sometimes we're not.
But everyone agrees that for the West to survive, the most important two words today are water conservation.
I mean, I always try to remind myself that these water molecules are going to end up in a hot tub in Hollywood or watering a putting green in Palm Springs, and we're all part of this system. How do you think people understand that these days?
So yeah, that's great. I don't think we do. I come from Connecticut. I grew up on the East Coast where water law is totally different. Here it's first in line, first in right. It's treated like a mineral.
Some farmers in Arizona are some of the last in line, forced to let fields go fallow as allocations are cut. And this week, the Bureau of Reclamation warned members of the Senate of the need to cut up to 4 million acre feet in 2023. That's more than 1.3 trillion gallons, or almost as much as California is allotted in a year.
John Wesley Powell, who ran this river in 1869, he stated it to the federal government. There's not enough water to support the way we have developed.
The first guy down the Colorado tried to warn us that this would happen right now.
And now it is. Like, there's this assumption that it's always going to be there.
Yeah.
And I don't think people will change until it changes.
Until it's not there.
But as long as there's fun to be had and water to drink, it's easy to ignore the villain's warning in Mad Max Fury Road. Do not become addicted to water. It will take hold of you, and you will resent its absence. Bill Weir, CNN, Vernal, Utah.
Bill, thank you. Let's take a look now at this stunning video from alongside the Yellowstone River as that two-story house just washed away there. The Montana couple that lost their home had been used to high water levels on the river this time of year, but last Sunday night, they simply thought that the trees were banging into each other along the water. It wasn't until the next day that the end came and the reality was clear.
Something I never in a million years thought was even possible. And it's still unbelievable. And I just, I spent 16 years of my life there in that place.
In the morning, when we realized what was really going on, it was actually the embankment crumbling. And that's why the house was rumbling and shaking.
Our hearts go out to them. You are in the CNN newsroom, and when we come back tonight, the CDC clearing way for vaccines for children as young as 6 months old. Pediatrician Dr. Lisa Nguyen is here with advice for parents. Plus, President Biden pushing forward with his agenda ahead of the midterms. But some Democrats already thinking about 2024 and whether or not the president should run for re-election. And later, her career spans decades. And this weekend, Chaka Khan helps put a spotlight on Juneteenth and the push for equality in the Black community. She's going to join us later.
Let me rock you, let me feel for you. Chaka Khan, what you tell me what you wanna do? Do you feel for me the way I feel for you? Chaka Khan, let me...
Africa Avant-Garde in association with Access Bank. More than banking.
We need to start developing more writers. As a producer, I'm always on the lookout for new voices, new writers, because those are the foundations of good storytelling.
The best advice I've ever received is to never stop writing, because once you start practicing the thing that you want to get good at, you start having all those inflicting thoughts of, am I good enough?
To find your voice as a filmmaker or to tell stories that have deep impact, they have to be stories that affect you yourself. If it doesn't affect you, you can't translate that into a story. Whatever you write will be superficial. So first, if you're going to tell a story that is honest, it has to be honest to you first.
On Mission Ahead, a new spin on launching spacecraft into orbit.
As a species, I think we just always look up and we say, well, that's the next frontier.
Then, could this new zero-emission boat be the Tesla of the sea? Plus, preparing for the future, are cities that float the answer?
On water, buildings don't have to be static.
Meet the entrepreneurs and inventors who are taking mobility to the next level.
Mission Ahead, Saturday on CNN, in association with Fujifilm.
He's interviewed 5 U.S. presidents, authored 7 books, and has an independent voice that resonates.
What happened to when we were united against a common enemy?
He's raw, unique, and one of America's most important talk show hosts. Watch Smirconish, Saturday on CNN.
On the next Living Golf, discover the history of the sport in Sweden. How do they keep producing some of the world's best golfers? Hear from rising stars.
I think it's just more fun when a Swede wins.
Then, visit the region's flagship event, the Scandinavian Mixed, and sit down with Europe's next Ryder Cup captain, Henrik Stenson.
This is where it all started for me.
Living Golf, tonight on CNN, in association with Gulf Saudi.
These troops, they are Russian. I've spoken to the commander. He said they are now in control. Move on that way. It's a secret location. They're going to fire on Russian forces. There has been a ferocious battle here. There's unexploded grenades everywhere. We're being shown the powerful American guns, giving them an edge.
You downplayed the US intelligence assessment. Do you now regret that?
I'm in Kiev right now, and it is under attack, Mr. Lavrov, from Russian forces. I'm being told by our security that we need to get our flak jackets on. No matter where you are in this country, lives are being shattered. There are thousands streaming out. It is at least a chance to save their own lives. Matthew Chance, CNN.
Today, we live in an unpredictable environment, and news races around the world at breakneck speed. The missile struck right here. My show brings you the latest news and top news makers. What is your interpretation of Putin's intention? What does President Putin think he has achieved in Ukraine? What are the UN and other countries doing for you? What do you think an end to this looks like?
We just want to say stop to Vladimir Putin.
Amanpour, weeknights on CNN.
Today, shocking disclosures from January 6th. What's next? Committee member Adam Schiff, plus Republican Fred Upton. And can the U.S. get gas prices under control? Dana asks Secretary Jennifer Granholm. State of the Union. Today.
The White House says President Biden is fine and needed no medical attention after taking a tumble on his bicycle today. Let's listen. And you can see the Secret Service launched into action to help him. Biden says his foot got caught in his bike pedal. CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky has officially signed off on both the Pfizer and Moderna COVID vaccines for children aged 6 months to 5 years. But not all parents are on board. Fewer than 1 in 5 parents with children under 5 plan to get their children vaccinated immediately. That's according to a Kaiser Family Foundation poll. Dr. Lisa Gwynn is joining me now. She's the president of the Florida chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics. Dr. Gwynn, thanks for being here. It's great to have you on. I'm curious if you've heard the same hesitancy from your patients, the families of your patients.
Yes, we have heard some hesitation from parents. And, you know, we've been fighting this hesitation with kids of all ages. But we're hopeful that as the vaccine is out for longer, that parents will get their children immunized.
And you've told us, you know, there are a lot of misconceptions, as you're alluding to, out there that are causing parents to hesitate when making this decision, whether or not to vaccinate their children. You sent us the top 3 misconceptions you've been hearing from parents. Walk us through those and why they're wrong.
So the first misconception is really that that children aren't affected by COVID. And in fact, that's not the case. Kids do get sick from COVID, and many kids end up in the hospital with it. As a matter of fact, the Omicron variant has caused more children to be hospitalized than the Delta variant. So it is still a dangerous virus for some children. And so that's why we encourage vaccination, to make sure that the kids will be protected against the virus.
And then you also said that that they need more time to evaluate the safety of the vaccine. Is that accurate?
Yes, there are a lot of parents that want to wait to see if there is more safety data out there. But in fact, the vaccine has been studied. It has gone through rigorous trials and has been reviewed by the scientific community in the same process that any other vaccine has been evaluated. And so that's often a misconception. The fact of the matter is that the vaccine has been proven to be safe, And usually, if we see any side effects or complications from the vaccine, we see it very early on. And so far, the studies have been very, very promising. And so we feel as though it is safe and effective.
And then the third misconception you said people have is that people still get COVID even if they're vaccinated, so why bother? That's another misconception that you hear a lot.
We're hearing that a lot now. And it is true that people can still get COVID from even if they're vaccinated. However, it cuts the chance of them being severely ill and hospitalized, and it also lowers the risk of death. And so this is why we still encourage all people to get vaccinated, even our little ones.
And a member of the National Association of Pediatric Nurse Practitioners spoke about the strategy to get these younger children vaccinated. Let's listen to that.
I was a bit dismayed with some of the headlines coming out after the VRBPAC decision emphasizing, quote, it's up to the parent. This can be misinterpreted to consider this vaccine in young children as optional. We don't get out of pandemics with it's up to you type strategies.
And so if it's up to you strategies don't work, what kind of messaging do you think will here?
So pediatricians, this is what we do on a day-to-day basis. You know, we talk to parents about all of the vaccinations that we recommend for children. And so we take an approach that we provide the information to the parents regarding the vaccine, regarding the safety, regarding what the vaccine is protecting the child against. And with their medical provider, parents can make that decision for their children. We never want to force a parent to immunize their child unless they're comfortable with it. But this is what we do in pediatrics. We provide that data and information and reassurance to parents so that they can make the right decision for their child.
Right, that these are safe and effective. We also know that children ages 5 to 11, that's the most recent group that was eligible for vaccination. According to the CDC, only 29% of them, though, have received 2 doses, and that's significantly lower than any other age group. Is this a bit of a losing battle for pediatricians, for healthcare workers with these younger children?
We never consider it a losing battle. Every vaccine and arm is another child that is protected. And so, yes, we have a lot of work to do, but we're not going to give up. We want to continue to encourage parents to get their children vaccinated. And we're thrilled that the CDC has recommended now the vaccine for the younger children. And so we're just going to keep pushing forward and recommend that vaccine for everybody.
All right, Dr. Lisa Gwen, thanks so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
The next presidential election is still more than 2 years away, but with control of Congress at stake now, chatter is building over whether President Biden should run for re-election. Historian Julian Zelizer is here to weigh in on that debate. But first, a quick programming note. You can join some of the biggest stars as they lift their voices for Juneteenth, a global celebration for freedom. It's airing live tomorrow night at 8, only here on CNN.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
Business never sleeps. As the sun sets in Seoul and Shanghai, deals are signed in Dubai, and Europe is already in play. New York prepares to make its first move. I'm Julia Chatterley, journalist, global market analyst, and host of CNN's First Move. Join me in the financial capital of the world for market-moving perspective on the news influencing global politics, culture, and finance. I'll speak to newsmakers, risk takers, and the ultimate game changers.
Bold moves, big deals, winning trades. It's all right here. Make CNN your first move.
First Move with Julia Chatterley. Weekdays on CNN.
This is the Innovation Center, right?
Indeed,
Okay.
where the magic happens. So what you're going to be going through now is an experience zone built with the end user's journey in mind. So
Akshay Chopra heads the Innovation Center at Visa's newly opened regional headquarters in Dubai. I'm taking a seat. This is for me.
this is all yours.
Thank you very much. Overseeing 90 markets from Europe to Asia.
You can take any surface like a bus stop, a metro station, turn it into a well-stocked retail store.
And let's just say, it's pretty cool, turning everyday bores and chores into a digital delight. This is actually a really good first take, don't you think? Add to cart.
We want to make it easier for people to pay, get paid. We work with governments, with fintechs, with banks, with merchants of all shapes and sizes to help build payment experiences that are more convenient, more seamless, and more secure.
In a region where cash is king, Akshay says the global pandemic accelerated the move to digital.
Today, what will it take for Ukraine to win the war? Fareed sits down with retired General David Petraeus and retired Admiral James Stavridis. Fareed Zakaria, GPS. Today on CNN.
It is actually very complicated to move money around the world. Few companies can do it at scale. Few companies can do it in the number of countries that we do it. And so these companies that come together like MoneyGrams and like our competitors do really provide a very unique service, and that is to instantly move money, get funds from the United States to Mexico, literally in sub-seconds. For the ability to take $350 that you worked hard to earn and get it back to your mother so that she can pick it up in Mexico, use it for food, healthcare, housing, is actually a very unique service. If you're from many of the countries, Mexico, Philippines, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, some of the largest receive markets in the world, it's absolutely critical to the lives of the consumers in those countries. But many people don't appreciate that. If it's not the life that you live, then it's not something that you really ever really get involved in.
I'm Dr. Sanjay Gupta in New York, and this is CNN.
Even though the midterm elections are still months away, there's already open discussion about what Democrats should do about 2024. Will Joe Biden run again? Should President Joe Biden run again? Last weekend, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez danced around those questions.
We'll cross that bridge when we get to it, but I think if the president has a vision, then that's something certainly we're all willing to entertain and examine when the time comes. I believe that the president has been doing a very good job so far, and should he run again, I think that I think it's we'll take a look at it.
But writing for The Atlantic, Mark Leibovich doesn't pull any punches, saying, quote, "Yes, he's fit to be president right now, but he's too old for the next election." CNN political analyst Jillian Zelizer joins me now. Jillian, it's great to see you. You just published an op-ed on CNN.com saying the Democrats should not be so quick to throw President Biden overboard. Walk us through that. Tell us why.
I think there's several reasons. One is that President Biden has a pretty significant record of accomplishment, from the American Rescue Plan to how he's handled the Russian war, which offers him something pretty formidable to run on despite the times he's in right now. Second, many presidents have had very tough second years and bad midterms. Ronald Reagan in 1982, Barack Obama in 2010, just as examples, and they go on to win re-election. Third, it's unclear who is better positioned in the Democratic Party than an incumbent president right now. And unless Democrats have a clear answer, I think that's a risk. And finally, in recent times when presidents haven't run for re-election, Harry Truman in 1952, Lyndon Johnson in 1968, the Republicans won. So it didn't necessarily benefit the party to have the incumbent step down.
Yeah, that historical precedent there. Let's take a look at some CNN polling from earlier this year among Democrats and Democratic-leaning independents. And when asked about the 2024 presidential nominations, 45% said Biden, 51% said pick someone else, 5% had no opinion. What do those numbers tell you?
Well, the pick someone else is problematic, and it should be troubling to the administration. I don't think the administration inevitably takes that and says, we're not going to run again, but rather they need to do, I think what it was AOC was saying, to really start to lay out what the next 2 years are going to look like, and most important, to figure out what they are going to do to make sure the economy doesn't go into a recession. If they can handle the economy well, and have a vision for 2024, it's very conceivable to see him going on and winning re-election.
And let's look at the Republican side just for a second. That same CNN poll finding former President Trump got 49% of the vote to be the GOP's nominee in 2024. He's 76, just 3 years younger than Biden. Does he run into these same questions about his age as well?
Well, he will, and it did come up during his first term already. And if it's in the air for one candidate, it will be in the air for both candidates. Right now, I do think the former president has much more fervent support with his base in many ways, which insulates him from some of these concerns. And Republicans tend to be much more disciplined and united. Democrats fight amongst themselves much more. And so I think that makes it a little harder for Biden on that question than Trump. And of course, Biden is in power, so the person in power will receive the greatest criticism.
And let's go back to the Democrats and to President Biden for a second. I know I heard you when you said if they can get the economy going and get a handle on that and position themselves that they have a good chance for 2024. Do you believe that the looming debate over abortion rights and gun control, some of these key issues, can revitalize Biden in the eyes of Democrats?
Well, it might revitalize Biden, or it might re-energize Democratic voters. We saw in 2018, for example, how suburban female voters were really important in mobilizing the vote and voting in those midterms, which hurt the former president and the president's standing. And this is a big issue. So we'll see what the Supreme Court does. But with that and gun rights, I do think it could energize the electorate, not so much energize how they necessarily feel about the president.
And of course, you're a historian. Looking back, what does history tell us about what we're seeing play out right now for President Biden and the political circumstances surrounding him?
Look, the good news is you can recover, and there's many examples of presidents doing that. The bad news is bad economic times, if they continue, will hurt the president. President George H.W. Bush in '92, where the economy went the wrong way, lost to President Bill Clinton. And secondly, if there's a primary challenge, that always hurts the incumbent, and incumbents really don't recover from a serious primary challenge. So there's a lot of risks and challenges that Biden is facing to get to 224 and to win.
And there's an old political quote that goes something like, Democrats want to just fall in love, Republicans just want to fall in line when it comes to presidential nominees. Do you think that holds true heading into 2024? I know we're still years away.
Yeah, look, it's not as true as it used to be. In fact, Trump's ascendancy in 2016 shook some of that conventional wisdom. But it is true that overall the Republicans have done more in terms of uniting around their candidates, around their leadership, where Democrats are a more fractured and divided party. It's just a key characteristic of both parties, and it becomes a challenge for Democrats when they need that unity, either in an election or on Capitol Hill.
All right, Julian Zelizer, thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Well, still ahead in the CNN newsroom, you might not know it from all the celebrity endorsements, but crypto is getting crushed right now. What's behind the price meltdown, and should you stay away from it? We're going to ask John Sarlin from CNN Business next.
All new Inside Africa. Go inside the inventive minds, evolving places, and creative trends. of the Africa you need to know now. For Nigeria's thespians, the world is their stage.
The journey of an actor or an artist is very peculiar. Sometimes you have to create opportunities for yourself.
Inside Africa on CNN, in association with Zenith Bank.
You've seen this explosion of life, and life has come back because of a new habitat that's been created with a whole load of big animals. So we went from this very intensive conventional farming system to a free-roaming, animal-based habitat creation project, rewilding.
One of the things you can do is introduce free-roaming herbivores, and all of them, the way they disturb the land, the way they trample and rootle, everything that they do has a hugely important knock-on effect, a sort of domino effect for biodiversity. We've seen here some of the rarest species in Britain. An amazing species that we had never had here before is the turtle dove. And we're probably the only piece of land in the UK where turtle dove numbers are actually rising.
This butterfly is an incredibly rare butterfly. Here you can see it in their hundreds.
It's about kicking off natural processes again in a system, and then as human beings trying to stand back from it as much as possible and let nature perform.
To see a landscape in your own country and what you've been missing suddenly come to life has been this extraordinary revelation, this surprise, this feeling of just joy that we can do it.
Heard it all before? But have you heard it like this?
The ultimate disruptor looks set to shake up our world. We really can't ignore the impact that this has. What can we do that explores a fresh angle? So let's untangle the players and political forces. The truth is a lot more complex. What's really going on?
Fast-paced news, in-depth reports, and fact checks from the perspective of The Global Brief with Bianca Nobilo. Weeknights on CNN.
A crypto crash is taking a toll on investors and workers. Over the last 6 months, cryptocurrencies have plummeted. Take a look at Bitcoin. It's fallen from an all-time high of $69,000 to just about $20,000 on Friday. And the companies are laying off workers as well, from 20% at crypto lending platform BlockFi, 18% at Coinbase, 10% at Gemini Exchange, and 5% at Crypto.com. John Sarlin is the host of the new business show Nightcap at CNN.com. John, good to see you. We know you've been covering cryptocurrency. Walk us through what's behind the big drop.
Well, I think you could look at it two different ways. You could look at this specific drop as stemming from the fall of a currency called Luna and Terra that happened last month. That was a so-called stablecoin. And as that currency collapsed, we've seen how far from being decentralized, the decentralized finance space is, we know that buzzword, it's actually extremely centralized, because as one project fails, other projects have become insolvent. We find out that they've been invested in that project. So right now we're seeing these kind of dominoes falling in the crypto space. But then you could also step back and look at it from a different way, which is that when you look at the history of speculative bubbles, it can kind of be anything that causes them to fall down, because people are really interested in these bubbles, not because of the value that they're providing, but because of the money that seems to be generated from it, right? And so it could kind of be anything that causes people to realize, hey, this thing might not be as stable and as a sure investment as I thought it was. And when that happens, the dominoes begin to fall.
So interesting. And this is also affecting people's livelihoods. We know that some of the cryptocurrencies are having to cut jobs. How intense is that? How severe has that been?
So we're seeing a serious contraction within the industry themselves. On top of that, we're seeing exchanges with holding their users' funds, saying they're unable to give their funds to their users. This is users' money, and they aren't able to access it. But then we know the human cost of people who have invested in crypto, who have listened to the ads from Matt Damon and LeBron James, or the tech titans like Jack Dorsey and Elon Musk, who have said crypto is the future. Crypto is this sure thing, and you better get in on this early. Well, a lot of people have invested because of that. A lot of people around the world have invested in that. And there's been great reporting on people in countries with unstable currencies who saw cryptocurrency as this place to park their money and get rewards in a stable currency. Well, it has proven to not be very stable and, in fact, very risky. And people around the world are seeing the money that they put into cryptocurrency fall.
Yeah. And we saw Bill Gates telling the TechCrunch conference this week that digital asset trends like NFTs are, quote, 100% based on the greater fool theory. And yet, as you just pointed out, we see a lot of celebrities, a lot of these tech titans pushing cryptocurrency. And yet these crypto items have a very little regulation. So how risky are these investments, and what kind of risk are people taking on when they invest?
I think we're learning that they're incredibly risky. I mean, that kind of goes without saying. And when you think about this industry, ask yourself, when you hear about cryptocurrency, how much are you hearing people talk about the value of cryptocurrency, as in how much it's worth, versus the value that it's providing, versus the actual services and applications that people are using for cryptocurrency? I mean, we've had these last few years where literally billions of dollars have been pouring into this industry, but this, we're finding out, really is a problem in search of a solution, because after years of this money pouring into cryptocurrency, there still isn't that killer product that gets everyone excited about. So the money that's been coming into this space has been speculative, and speculative bubbles are quick to burst.
Mm-hmm. And so before we let you go, is this still the future? Is cryptocurrency still the future, and Web3 and all the things, all the terms that we hear talked about?
Well, there's been a very effective marketing campaign from big crypto to make it seem like cryptocurrency is this inevitability, that it's the future of money, that it's the future of technology. What we've seen over the last year is a pushback from people in the technology space saying, hey, this technology isn't actually as useful as billed. We've seen a pushback from people within government, experts and regulators who are saying, hey, you know, the real innovation that appears from a lot of these things are that they're unregulated. These are unregulated financial markets. And now we're learning the cost of unregulated financial markets.
All right, John Sarlin breaking it down for us. A complicated subject, but you make it easy to digest. Thank you so much. You can check out John's new show, Nightcap, at CNN.com. Still ahead, the former president claims he never called his vice president a wimp, and then proceeds to suggest just that. The apparently ongoing feud on display just days after disturbing evidence revealed by the January 6th committee.
When
When Hublot smashed into the watch world in 2004, it really left a crater hole that has never quite seen the industry recover. This was such a bold, brash, and incredibly brazen take on watchmaking. The Big Bang was the product that launched this ship with a vengeance. These were big, brash, unapologetic watches with all kinds of riveted bezels and large dimensional pushes on the side. This was a watch that, again, was not steeped in tradition. It was creating an entirely new personality and boldness. All of this was brought to the brand by the new owner, Jean-Claude Biver, one of the most electric, energetic, and controversial figures in the watch industry. It's hard to think of any other watch brand that's had that much impact on such a conservative industry.
Nonviolence means feeling oneness with all living beings. And part of that is wanting freedom for all living beings. My name is Sadhvi Sadali Shri. I'm a Jain monk and filmmaker based in Dallas, Texas. I became a Jain monk in 2008 after serving in the Iraq War. I was deployed and I experienced a lot of violence, and I experienced it emotionally and mentally when I came back going through PTSD. A couple of years ago, another monk and I were talking about sexual abuse, and we knew as monks we wanted to raise awareness about the taboo subject. We didn't know about human trafficking yet. And so when we decided to raise awareness, we wondered, what are we gonna do? And we didn't have any film experience, but we knew by making films, we could educate many people. Surviving Sex Trafficking is my second film, and we wanted to follow the journey of healing of the survivors featured in the film. So we traveled around the world and also within the United States. And it was important to us to know their journey and to see if they can truly heal. Is there hope?
My name is Stephen Jameson, Global Head of Circular Economy Solutions at SAP. The aim of a circular economy is to eliminate waste, circulate materials, keep products in use as long as possible, and regenerate natural systems. We're talking about a fundamental reworking of how we deliver the economy. At the moment, we're based upon an extractive system which depends upon nature, but is ultimately extractive. That will only go one way in the long term. A regenerative economy ultimately creates abundance of opportunity, abundance of materials, abundance of resources that enable us to thrive as a species and thrive as a piece of nature and as a part of nature.
I'm Linda Kincaid in Atlanta, and this is CNN.
Transformation, technology, new Marketplace Europe.
A Davos of difference, a WEF like no other, as leaders face historic crises.
Marketplace Europe, tonight on CNN.
Former President Trump is sounding off on the January 6th committee, lashing out at the House panel. He even criticized his former Vice President Mike Pence before a crowd of conservative activists. CNN's Kristen Holmes has more from this weekend's Faith and Freedom Conference in Nashville.
Jessica, this was the first opportunity that the former president had to respond to those hearings other than on his own social media platform, and he really took that opportunity. He repeated lies about the 2020 election. He attacked the committee. He accused the committee of deceptively editing video interviews in order to make him look bad. And I will note that the chairman of the committee has said that they will release the full transcripts of those interviews at some time. But perhaps the most striking attack that the former president made was against his former vice president, Mike Pence. This was a man who served underneath him for 4 years and who just the day before the committee had laid out just how dangerous of a situation Mike Pence was in on January 6th. Take a listen to just some of what the former president had to say.
I never called Mike Pence a wimp. I never called him a wimp. Mike Pence had a chance to be great. He had a chance to be, frankly, historic. But just like Bill Barr and the rest of these weak people, Mike, and I say it sadly because I like him, but Mike did not have the courage to act.
And Jessica, I want to point one thing out here, and that is the crowd that the former president was talking to. While, of course, there were a number of loyalists in the audience. In fact, everyone we spoke to said that they would support President Trump in some way or another if he were to choose to run in 2024. This is also a very Pence-friendly crowd. This is a conservative Christian conference, one that Pence has spoken at for years. And some of those insults that were made by Donald Trump were met with tepid applause.
All right, Kristen Holmes for us in Nashville. Thanks so much. And you were in the CNN newsroom. Still ahead, hush money and a sex scandal. The allegations that have the chair of the World Wrestling Entertainment on the ropes, but not quite out of the ring.
Here now at the home of one of the FSB team, and my name's Clarissa Ward. I work for CNN. Was it your team that poisoned Navalny?
It's just been a chaotic scene here. People are so exhausted. Just gonna help her carry this bag. We were just in the hospital. It was shocking. Why do you think India has been hit so badly? Scores of Taliban fighters, and just behind us, the U.S. Embassy.
Why does a small group of women asking for their right to be educated threaten you so much? Raise your hand if you love school.
I'm the one who has to look them in the eye. Can I have your word? These people are depending on you. You can hear gunshots every couple minutes. And now they're pressing in. They want desperately to tell their story.
I'm Zain Asha, and this is CNN.
We released last year the very first motorcycle with radar. And what that's allowed us to do is to be able to put some technology in the motorcycle that gives features of safety for the rider, including blind spot indicators that's been used on cars for years. So we're not only dedicated to that performance, but also to try and improve our environmental impact and also the safety for the riders themselves.
When you travel the world, make sure the world travels with you. Check in, log on, and get connected with all of the latest developments at your fingertips. CNN Partner Hotels. Connected to your world.